Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marek Chodakiewicz. I don't know if this is
Right
working.
there.
If it works, it's on. Now it's on. See, that's why nobody could hear you. I'd like to thank Sarah and Pavel for once again sacrificing their Saturday to serve a cause that's higher than themselves, namely the Institute of World Politics. I also would like to thank Mr. Paweł Stefański and Ms. Katarzyna Marchocka, who provoked me to do this. I was actually going to speak about the anti-communist insurgents for our annual Kosciuszko military lecture in September, but since I really don't have anything to do, speed required that I assembled all of this. Thanks to Pavel, we were able to put things together. We will focus on Poland's anti-communist insurgents. We have a lot of material, so I'll race through everything I have so you wouldn't be bored. I'd like to ask you for a little bit of patience whenever you're ready. A brief history of armed anti-communist struggle starts with the Russian whites. By whites, we mean everybody from monarchists and conservatives through liberals, Christian Democrats, social democrats, socialists, and anarchists. Only the Bolsheviks stood on the other side. They were a minority. They didn't care. They won because they were better organized. The white forces, that, by the way, by white forces I also mean the Greens, which means peasant, helicocratic local republics that oppose the Reds, were never able to unite and find a common front. So starting with Russia in 1917 to 1921, the affliction in common that the anti-communist forces have is that they are so diverse, so disparate, they could never unite. Therefore, the communists won most of the time. Naturally, it would be a mistake to confine a talk about armed anti-communism to Russia. Not only were there anti-communist forces in the neighborhood, but there were anti-communists in China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Africa, anywhere the plague touched. There were armed anti-communist people who were willing to sacrifice their lives, in Afghanistan, for example, to fight against the Reds. We will try to show you, and here you have a Russian white knight trying to slay a red dragon, and next to it, this is General Stanisław Bałachowicz, who fought against the Reds as a part of General Judenich's effort in the north of the empire around St. Petersburg in Estonia, and eventually he assembled his own army and fought with the Poles in what is now Belarus. In the 1930s, he advised General Franco in Spain. And then he fought against the Nazis. Why? Well, they were socialists. So why not? And was killed by the Germans in Poland when he descended into the underground, Polish underground. A very colorful person that nobody knows about, or hardly anybody remembers. Can we have a clip from, we found a Romanian movie, so you would see, I don't know if it'll work, and then we'll go back. But if it works a little bit.
It's not going to work with this one, because I tried to have it
Okay.
in a website.
Okay, let's do it through a website if it's possible. Just a tiny little. This is a movie about Romanian anti-communist insurgents. They were connected to the youth movement of nationalist radicals. Can you see the insurgents? We just have a little bit of time. At any rate, most of them were students and workers. They took to the mountains following World War II. A few of them had been affiliated with nationalist radicals, hardcore, pro-German in World War II. As most of other anti-communist insurgents, unfortunately, were in Central and Eastern Europe. Anyway, so let's go to the map. Mr. Sterna can send you a link. The movie is available on YouTube. Before it's taken down, you can watch it. All you have to do is send us an email. One of the greatest, mostly spontaneous expressions of anti-communism was a wave of anti-Soviet uprisings as Germans invaded from Tallinn to Odessa. Some of it was the work of German intelligence, that is, local nationalists from the Baltics, Ukraine, etc., wanted to defeat the communists, the Soviets, so they solicited German help. But most of the time when Germany stormed east against the Soviet Union, there were spontaneous outbreaks. The problem is that they quickly degenerated into anti-Jewish acts. It was a part of the Holocaust. So this has to be kept in mind when we talk about anti-communism too. Okay. Here you have some of the staunchest anti-communist fighters, the Chetniks in Serbia. They were pro-Western. The West betrayed them. They fought against the Nazis, the communists, and Italian fascists. Sometimes they would make tactical, not so much alliances, but ceasefires. They would conclude tactical ceasefires with especially the Italian fascists, so they could concentrate on fighting the communists. But so did the communists. The SS actually withdrew from a part of Yugoslavia so that Tito could move his troops in and crush the white forces, the Chetnik forces. There, well, most of the communists were killed, very few escaped to the west. Here is the last of the Estonian anti-communist insurgents. He was killed by the KGB in 1978. He had stayed in the forest until then. He is by no means a record holder. The last Ukrainian insurgent emerged from his sister's attic in 1991. He decided that he wasn't going to surrender, nor did he want to go to the Gulag. 1991. By the way, the Romanian, which we saw very briefly in the clip, was captured in 1976. He was the last one of his band, and he survived. He married a woman, I think he died in 2003. This is almost completely unknown. We have a lot of stuff. Those of you who are interested in the Estonian experience, here's War in the Woods, Estonia's Struggle for Survival. The author is Mark Laar, future Estonia's Prime Minister. He eventually would become Prime Minister of Estonia. This is how dissidents became organized in the 1980s. In the Baltics, they collected memories, forbidden memories. And now we have pictures from the KGB itself. This is an attempt by the KGB to seize this guy. And he fought back, so they killed him. There was no forgiveness, by the way. Well, the history of Polish armed anti-communism is extremely rich. Again, we're only now rediscovering it, much of it from the secret police archives. Arguably the first Polish anti-communist was General Józef Dowbor-Muśnicki. When the Russian Empire crumbled, there were lots of Polish soldiers. Some of them were POWs from the Austrian and Prussian armies taken by the Russians. Others, the bulk, were Russian soldiers, Poles who had been drafted into the Russian military because there was no Polish state during World War I. There were Poles naturally fighting on the American side, many of them from Chicago and Boston, but that's another story. So here you have General Dowbor-Muśnicki, my great-grandmother's brother, was a Wachmistrz, a cavalry sergeant with General Muśnicki's first Krychowiecki Lancers regiment. There were lots of spontaneously formed units. Here's the Wilno self-defense, future 13th Wilno Lancers Regiment and 72nd Narbut Lida Infantry Regiment. They were simply local kids who decided to oppose the Bolsheviks that were moving in the wake of the retreat of the German army following the armistice of November 11th, 1918. There were guerrillas of Major Jaworski. This is Jerzy Dąbrowski-Łupaszko, one of the greatest guerrillas ever. He was killed by the Bolsheviks. Here's in 1940, but here's the Jaworczycy and his guerrillas. They operated in the Ukraine, around Kiev, between Volhynia and Kharkiv, more or less. What did they do? They defended civilian population, Christians and Jews, from the anarchy and depredations, mostly of the Bolsheviks and local bandits. That's what they did. They were self-defense forces. And of course, the high point of Polish anti-communism, this is the Polish-Soviet War. You have a nice poster there. This is the only time ever the Red Army was defeated in the field. Ever. And again, this is quite unknown. Hardly anybody studies it. There are very few monographs, very little work done on the Polish-Bolshevik War. And of course, that wouldn't be complete without American fighter pilots who volunteered to fight the Bolsheviks. I bet you all know who this is. This is a symbol of the Kosciuszko squadron, so I'm shilling for the chair. You guys write checks for us, tax deductible, supporting education. You all know who this is. The founder of the American wing of the Polish Air Forces was Miriam Cooper, who created King Kong. It's the producer of King Kong. You know, the beast from the east attempts to seduce a gullible maiden of the west, and the gallant pilots ride to the rescue. That's the Polish-Bolshevik War, ladies and gentlemen. King Kong was Lenin. At any rate, I'm not kidding, this was Miriam Cooper, one of the very few non-Reds in Hollywood. The next unveiling of the story comes through the Nazi-Soviet pact and the partitions of Poland and the rest of the Intermarium between 1939 and 1941. The Poles commenced fighting the Soviets, the communists, immediately upon the invasion of Poland by Stalin on September 17, 1939. And here's the story. This guy, Henryk Dobrzański-Huba, is very well known because he never surrendered, never left the field until he was killed in April 1940 by the Nazis, by the Germans. However, it's only a part of the story. His commanding officer was Colonel Jerzy Dąbrowski-Łupaszko, who divided his unit, and he sent Huba to fight the Germans. He took the rest of the unit and fought the Soviets. So first, guerrillas actually simultaneously fought two enemies of humanity, the Nazis and the communists. The Poles are equal opportunity haters. Yes. The Soviets returned in 1944 and 1945. In Poland, uniquely, unlike in China or Yugoslavia, where communist tactics of provoking the occupier, either Japanese or Germans, to inflict terror upon innocent civilian population worked. In Poland, uniquely, it didn't. Why? Because the underground in Poland, pro-Western underground, understood that the Soviets were using provocation, inflicting terror upon civilian population by provoking the occupying forces. They were using it as a recruitment and radicalizing tool. The more you destroy, the more you can rebuild anew in a communist form. So the Poles understood what was going on already in 1942, and the Polish underground, the Home Army, and especially the National Armed Forces, and the peasant battalions at the local level put paid to it. The communists did not succeed in recruiting a large force under the guise of a struggle for national liberation. They were simply given the treatment, and the countryside was liberated from the communists as far afield as Vilna. In fact, I remember reading a Soviet book back in the, it was published in the mid or early 60s. I remember reading it. The title was "Na Niemanie żdut swoich," which means we're awaiting our own people on the river Neman, which in terms can be explained as up to the river Niemen, which had been Poland's pre-war border. The Home Army guerrillas cleansed the communists, and there was no threat to anybody. This was armed communism, and when there was no NKVD and no Red Army, the Poles and others could handle their own. The Poles at the same time were fighting the Nazis, so it was a difficult task, but you know the old Polish joke, whom do you fight first, the Germans or the Russians? The Germans, of course, business before pleasure. At any rate, here is a map of the Polish anti-communist uprising. The uprising commenced actually as an insurrection against the Nazis in 1944. When the Soviets moved in, they started killing Polish anti-Nazi insurgents or shipping them to the Gulag. So the insurgency first simmered down, but it continued, and it was at its height in the spring of 1945, where it actually controlled much of what remained of pre-war Poland, central and eastern, contemporary central, eastern, and northern Poland. It was unbelievably effective. Simply, the insurgents continued to pursue the targets that had been earmarked for liberation when the Nazis were still in the area. And Poland was free in the spring of 45. Then the Red Army took Berlin, turned around, and sent the troops back to put the Polish insurgency down. It took a very long time. However, I'd like to stay with the map for a little bit. 2 points. The Soviets had twice as many NKVD regiments in Poland than they did in occupied Germany. You understand what that means? That's why nobody sane can refer to the entry of the Red Army into Central and Eastern Europe, Poland in particular, as liberation. Twice as many units. Now, look at the map again. The insurgency, those territories to the west were were former German territories. So the Polish population there was very weak. However, if you juxtapose the map of the anti-communist rising in Poland with today's voting patterns, you'll see this is where the conservatives win, invariably. This is who votes for the anti-communists and anti-post-communists today. Same areas. The west of the country usually votes for liberals and post-communists. Yeah. But especially south and southeast, solidly conservative. Invariably since the first election. Tradition, ladies and gentlemen, is a very important thing. Okay. Yes. Well, we will, this is what for 40 years or so, the Poles were allowed to see about their tradition. Here is communist propaganda, the giant, a communist soldier, and the diseased dwarf, or the diseased reactionary dwarf who's marched the home army, which means the underground. Remember, unlike in those other countries where many of the insurgents, or some of the insurgents, or many of the insurgent commanders and some of the insurgent rank and file were tainted with association with the Germans, with the Nazis. In Poland, it was the opposite. They fought both the Nazis and communists from the very beginning, and from the very beginning they were pro-Western. So this is a big difference. And therefore Poland was unique. No inferiority complex among the insurgents and their descendants, because you can pick a Hungarian or a Romanian resistor and say, didn't you used to wear a Wehrmacht uniform, or didn't you collaborate with the Nazis, or your people did? They have a problem with that. In Estonia, many of the insurgents, Latvia and Lithuania, had been affiliated with the Nazis, including the SS, not in Poland. There were only two nationalities in Europe that did not have SS units, Jews and Poles, nobody else. So, untainted. I'll tell you individual stories about the insurgents. Here is a souvenir, secret police souvenir photograph. You see his pants are ripped. That's because when they ran out of ammunition fighting against the secret police unleashed dogs on them. So two of his comrades are killed. His pseudonym was Niewinny. He was later shot by the secret police. But we now have access to secret police archives, so we can look at lovely souvenir photos like this of insurgents. Let's see some more. This is the one before was from the unit of Uskok from Freedom and Independence. This is National Military Union guys, all shot in '49. Let's have some more souvenir, secret police. This is the Pushchik unit, July 1953. Souvenir photos. Here is another insurgent propped up. Okay. Łupaszko. This is a friend of our family, and here, and you can ask. There's a daughter of Captain Drozdowicz right there from Vilna. He used to hide in my grandmother's place, and my grandfather's place, and your father did too. So he took his pseudonym after Colonel Jerzy Dąbrowski, the hero of the anti-Bolshevik struggle from 1919, 1920, the hero of 1939, who sent Hubal to fight the Germans, and he himself commenced fighting the Bolsheviks in September 1939. He is Zizio Sędzierosz, Major Zygmunt Sędzierosz of the 4th Zaniemiński Lancers Regiment. He started by fighting the Nazis, then he was in the anti-Soviet underground, and again anti-Nazi underground, highly decorated veteran. He is the commanding officer of Inca. We will talk about Inca. You will see a movie today. We'll mention her. That's her. This is the heroine of the movie we're about to see. I won't spoil the story, let me tell you. Her mom was killed by the Nazis. Her father died because of the Soviets. He was shipped to the Gulag and died. When she was 14, she was sworn in the underground. She was in the underground. She was a medic, but she was in the underground until the Soviets came in 1946. She was arrested. July 1945, I'm sorry. She was arrested, but the guerrillas attacked a convoy, secret police convoy, and NKVD convoy, and freed her. Then she was no longer in the underground because her identity was busted. So she was arrested. So she had to join a guerrilla unit. You see, guerrillas are not underground because they operate out in the open. If you're in the underground, you have a false identity and pretend to be a civilian, which she had done under the Nazis and then at the beginning of the Soviet occupation. She made a mistake, which you will see, but well, you'll see. I forgot what the movie gives out. There are more faces. Orlik. Ulrich was assassinated. This is his unit liberated a town from the Nazis. Then the communists came and he was assassinated. Warshitz, one of the bravest underground officers, he was captured and executed. I just want you to see the faces and the context. This kid was shot after a trial that lasted maybe 9 minutes. The one next to him as well. These young people were executed by the communists. Of course, no Polish activity is complete without a priest. These are chaplains of the underground. They were in the anti-Nazi underground and seamlessly segued into the anti-communist underground. They were captured and executed by the communists. They usually blessed the troops. They didn't participate in any struggles. There's a friend of my family. My great uncle was a commando. I don't know if you have his wife's picture. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, he was dropped from England. He had fought the Nazis and Soviets in 1939. He made it to the West, fought in France, at Narvik, I think, and then he was trained as a commander in England and was dropped with, I think, shortly after my great uncle in 1942 into Nazi-occupied Poland. He fought the Nazis, he fought the communists, the Soviets, and eventually he was captured. And when he was being dragged out of his cell, he was at that point 35 or 36. He had been massacred, tortured, never broke down, and he yelled to his cellmates, "We shall never surrender." And then the communists put a bullet in his head. This is Michał Krupa-Wierzba, one of the last guerrillas in Poland. This is the act of his arrest in 1959 by the communists. They captured him in the forest. He wasn't the last one. Zbych and Zagończyk were killed in battle. This is a famous mountaineer, Major Józef Kuraś, Ogień. He was anti-communist, center-left, peasant party, unaffiliated. He cooperated with the Soviets as a part of the Polish underground because he was naive. And then when the communists seized power, he was surprised that the communists were communists. You know, that's what happens to people of the left-wing disposition. They usually delude themselves, but that's just the way it is. There's nothing I can do. Stalin was Uncle Joe for FDR, just as you will see this guy, Felix Selmanowicz, today in the movie. Again, from Vilna, he was an underling of Captain Drozdowicz. He had been a cavalry sergeant, Wachmistrz, later second lieutenant, became commissioned. He's a Polish Tatar. Very many people you see there who call themselves Poles are of a variety of backgrounds. Killed in battle with the NKVD in what is now Belarus. Lieutenant Radzivonik. Oleg. He was Orthodox and of Belarusian origin, and he has a Polish eagle here. He called himself Polish because it was a question of culture, not ethnicity, an anti-communist, of course. And he's Zapora again, the one who shouted, "We shall never surrender." Felix Selmanowicz, Polish Tartar, was executed with Inca. He was a part of the Łupaszko squadrons. So was my grandma. Zygmunt Błażejewicz was a fantastic guy. He survived and made it to the West. Because he had been born as a child of a Siberian deportee within the Russian Empire, he couldn't get a visa to America because they thought he was Russian. So he went to Argentina first. Now he's still alive, I think, in Arizona. But he did make it back to Poland, and he gave a speech from the steps of a church in a town he liberated. I'll mention it to you in a second. It was a fantastic occasion. Go ahead. Oh, this is not my, this is my great uncle, this is not my aunt.
Well, she's right there. The pictures are physical pictures.
There you go. I'll send it around. Don't take it because she'll get up from it. Would you like to see women in the military? Here you go. This is the Holy Cross Brigade of the National Armed Forces. He was the chief of staff, also a commando. Here is one of my dinosaurs, people I loved, grew up with. Another commando dropped into Nazi-occupied Poland. Earlier he fought the Nazis and communists. He fought in France, was taken prisoner, escaped from a POW camp, made it to England. He was trained as a commando, dropped in Poland, fought the Nazis, fought the communists. He was captured, given 9 consecutive death sentences. But because there was an amnesty in 1947, the death sentences were switched to life. In 1955, he staged a prisoner rebellion and took over the prison. He wanted to arm the prisoners and liberate Poland. Unfortunately, there was a regiment of secret police troops which came and changed everyone's mind. Not his, because he emerged from jail and quickly joined the underground Ruch. He's the mentor of Andrzej Czuma. Then he was in the movement for the defense of human rights in Poland in the 1980s and in Solidarity. Eventually he came to the United States, where he lingered on welfare for a little bit. He was quite old then, so he couldn't get a job. Returned to Poland and raised hell. We raised hell together. I always brought kids, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts to him, so he'd tell the story. His favorite was about sending a bomb disguised as a cake to the secret police in Grubieszy. And I said, you sent it to the commandant's house? Yes. What about his wife? Oh, the bomb was blessed. It only killed him, not his wife. Anyway. Yes. Women, as I mentioned, are looking at the picture, which you'll send back to me. It's my only one. Look at women. She was tortured, Danuta Sochowna, for 3 months every day, and she didn't break down. And I don't mean waterboarding, that's worm fuzzing. I mean tearing the fingernails off with a pair of pliers. That was the rule. Yaga was a liaison. She was also the wife of Major Ojciec Janek, an underling of my great uncles. That's how I know those stories, because they weren't until quite recently, they had not been written down. She was pregnant. The secret police kidnapped her, tortured her, and they shot her in 1946. You want to talk about liberation? And here's my grandmother. My grandmother was arrested by the Gestapo in November 1943. She had been with the underground. Well, first she was a medic in territorial defense in Vilna in September '39. Then she was in the underground, captured by the Nazis, the Gestapo, in November 1943. She underwent horrible interrogation. She didn't break down. We have her papers from the Gestapo. The underground bought her out in 1944, April. She was very upset because when the underground expressed interest in her, it confirmed the Germans' suspicion that she knew things. So she survived. She went back, recuperated. She continued with the underground. Her husband, my grandfather, was arrested in December 1944 and shipped to the Gulag. She was arrested in May 1945. I have her interrogation records, 14 hours of beating. One page, she confessed that her name was indeed what it was, and she confessed she knew she was a counter-revolutionary, and she was accused from that paragraph, and she also confessed she was a typist, and she confessed that she joined the underground. She had joined the underground a week before she was arrested. So I have an NKVD web, which is a drawing of all top underground people in the Vilna area, and she's listed as her own typist. And her own position, which was the chief liaison, that means she knew everybody, is a blank picture. Because they didn't know they had the NKVD, the secret police didn't know it had the chief liaison of the Vilna Home Army district. She survived, was released to be followed by the secret police, but the underground rescued her, brought her to Nazi-occupied Poland, where she continued, and Łupaszka was a part of, and Inga Siedzikówna, they were the part of the same organization called Wileński Ośrodek Mobilizacyjny, the Vilna Mobilization Center, under Colonel Olechnowicz, I'm sorry. At any rate, Maria Chatowska. She was tortured. She and Ruta Czaplicka. They both were tortured. Czaplicka. They were both tortured in the same manner. Namely, Major Humer stood on her chest while Major Szymański and their underlings held her legs and hands, and Major Humer took a lead-tipped whip and hit her on her crotch. That's how she was tortured. Ruta Czaplińska and Maria Chatowska. My grandmother, by the way, was arrested by the secret police again in '48, and they gave her the treatment. She never broke down. We have the interrogation methods. If you're interested in the gory detail, I did a study of torture by the communist secret police. It's 100 or so pages. It's available under my profile, IWP profile. Okay. Another anti-communist insurgent. She was fantastic. She refused to say a single word except to annoy secret policemen or beat her like a drum. Stephania Broniewska was the wife of the commander-in-chief of the National Armed Forces, General Zygmunt Broniewski. When the secret police tortured her, she said to them, this is in an official complaint. The official complaint was, she puts us down, she patronizes us, and she says that the truth will win and Poland will be free. This is a complaint by an interrogating officer. The spirit was unbroken in most of those people. They were all whacked, like my grandmother, but the spirit was unbroken. Oh, go ahead. Stefania Firkowska. This is the Princess Lvov. Democratic Russia's first foreign minister, and after the overthrow of the Tsar, was Prince Lvov. That's his granddaughter. She was a combat medic with the Łupaszka unit. Of course, she was from Vilna, and she would identify herself as Polish, even though ethnically she was Russian and a Russian aristocrat. She was fantastic. She's still alive, by the way. She survived imprisonment by the communists. I discovered this guy, you won't believe it. The communists pulled him out of a bunker in 1961. He had been in the underground since the beginning of the war. He joined the guerrillas in '43 after the Germans burned his village. And then he just fought the communists. Finally, he stopped fighting. He was hiding in the forest outside of Janów Lubelski. And he was caught in 1961. Guess what? He tried to achieve rehabilitation, legal annulment of the verdict of the communist court. In so-called free Poland, post-communist judges said that he was a bandit, and he still remains unrehabilitated. Why? Well, when he was hiding in the forest, he had to eat. So he would go to a store. Usually those are put-on jobs because the locals knew that he was hiding, and he would steal food. Okay. Now I talked about torture, horrible torture. Almost everybody broke down. Only exceptions There were only exceptions, usually women, which means women are more resilient. I'm not kidding. They were not given any free passes. Almost the same kind of torture used to women, even worse than to men. But very many insurgent commanders, especially after the fake amnesty of 1947, never fall for a communist amnesty. Especially after the fake amnesty of 1947, many insurgent commanders and rank-and-file insurgents chose suicide. Some of the people in the Souvenir Photos left the last bullet for themselves. Do you know why? If I capture you and torture you, you will reveal 300 at least names of people who had fed you. And you know what happens to them? A communist bulldozer comes with the secret police, they level the farmstead, confiscate everything, put you and your wife in jail and the children into the communist orphanage to indoctrinate them. So, insurgent commanders, instead of allowing themselves to be caught, because you never know how you will withstand torture. You never know how you're going to behave in combat, in any violent situation. I'll tell you more. Most of the time, each time violence happens, you cannot guarantee that you'll behave bravely, because violence is extremely surprising. Each time it's a trial. So let me talk about Żebrowski. Kazimierz Żebrowski-Bąk. He and his family were arrested and shipped to Siberia in 1940. He and his eldest son, who was 13 at the time, I think, hopped the train. The family survived the Gulag, most of the family, and is now in Australia. He hopped the train, returned to Poland, where he re-entered the underground. He conspired against the Soviets and he fought against the Nazis. He refused to reveal himself when the communists came, when the Soviet secret police came, and he continued fighting until he and his son were surrendered by the secret police while trying to break through. Now, the operation involved 1,200 secret police troops, I kid you not, against 2 insurgents. 1,200. They broke through the first chain of the dragnet. They were stopped by the second. The kid was shot, and the kid yelled at the father. This is in secret police documents. Daddy, I'm wounded. Kill me. The father killed the son, crossed himself, and blew his brains out. Isn't it like a Greek tragedy? This is exactly what it is. And that's why the communists were hiding it. Because it's powerful and inspirational. Free people shall not be broken. And that was one of the bravest ones. Józef Franczak Larek, when the secret police surrounded him in his hideout in the village, he ran out, tried to shoot at them, but his weapon malfunctioned. He threw a grenade, which malfunctioned. The police were scared enough to kill him. He was a bodyguard of Poland's president, pre-war president. He was a gendarme, big guy. Fought the Nazis, fought the communists from the very start. 1939, killed in action in 1963. World War II never ended for him. Many of the insurgents carried a ringgraf, which is a plaque on their uniform. Remember the picture of Łupaszko? You may have missed it. But religion was on everyone's lips, including those who had been indifferent, because there was nothing left. They all waited for World War III, which would have made sense before the Soviets stole our nuclear weapon. Then we could have taken it out, no problem. And here are the executioners. This is a murderess behind the desk. She wrote in blanco arrest orders, so the secret police could take anybody without any proof. She's responsible for judicial murder of such heroes as General Fieldorf, the head of anti-Nazi sabotage section of the Home Army. You can admire her. Because a movie has been made about her. Ida, he just got an Oscar. That's a sanitized apology. That's her. She was a communist prosecutor. Stefan Michnik, another murderer from behind the desk. He's responsible for 19 judicial murders, at least, including Captain Narcyz Łupianowski, a hero of the Warsaw Uprising against the Nazis. These are horrible, despicable people. Let's see some more. Here's Adam Humer. That's the guy who stood on Maria Chatowska and Elita Czaplinska's chest and whipped them with a lead-tipped whip. Do you know that by some fluke we were able to find a document implicating Humer in the judicial murder of an uncle of a friend of mine, Tadeusz Łabęcki, who was an underground journalist. So Humer beat him to death for printing underground leaflets, and then he bragged about it in a report. The report was misfiled. So we were able to find it, even though in the 1990s secret police papers had been locked away, and the liberal government didn't want to touch the post-communists, including the secret police. So we were able to find the document, and Humer went on trial. Mrs. Chatowska, Lieutenant Chatowska and Lieutenant Czaplinska testified. They talked about torture. They took the stand, and Humer was sitting like this when Ruta Czaplinska left the podium where she was testifying and started walking towards her seat. Humer hissed at her with a loud voice, "Bitch!" And the judge did nothing, because he was a post-communist. What did you expect? No decommunization, no justice, no peace. Stanisław Zarakowski. When the good people of Poland were making on the average $20 a month, his reward for being a judicial killer was about 2,000. They lived wonderfully, and that was not taken away from them by the post-communist, post-1989 system. The only decommunization that took place was at Veterans Affairs. A friend of mine, and I worked with him since the very inception and helped with anything I could. A friend of mine, Leszek Żebrowski, conducted the decommunization at Veterans Affairs, which means bandits like these were losing their veterans' benefits, because their veterans' benefits consisted of pulling people's fingernails off or judicially murdering heroes of the anti-Nazi and anti-communist resistance. Now, what's going on now? Well, I help. We produce books. This is an album of the Łupaszka brigades, of pictures, restoring them, telling the truth. We publish fun stuff like this. This is in brown copies. In the darkest days of Nazi and Soviet-dominated Europe, an underground group dreamed about the Slavic Empire. Interbarium, everybody should unite against the evil ones. That was the message. So first there was research. It was extremely hard because nobody wanted to talk. Sometimes we'd go and see a person, and in one instance there was a guy, I think in his early 80s, who jumped out the window when we identified him as an insurgent. Why? Because he had spent 10 years in jail, but the communists got a wrong guy. They thought this guy had been a quartermaster in the underground in the county of in Mazovia, in northern Mazovia. But he was really the chief counterintelligence officer who was first setting up lists of Nazi spies and then Soviet spies. So he was really, everybody was really scared after 40 years of totalitarianism. But the Institute of National Remembrance and lots of other people who came out of our milieu people who were putting together, discovering stories, have been hard at work, and it has impacted now popular culture. This is a bestseller. This is a bestseller about the Holy Cross Brigade of the National Armed Forces, which is plagiarized from a book that took me about 7 years to write. But this is a novel. This is a work of fiction. I had to go to the archives, spend my time, a lot of time, put back the story together, a secret story, so that Mrs. Elżbieta Herezińska could read my book and write something that you guys read, that normal people read. Not tedious historians like me. Fun stuff. And this sells 100,000 copies. And good for her. I'll show you two things. I'm almost done. This is what kids like to wear in Poland. National Armed Forces. The only equivalent we have here would be Confederate uniforms. And that's controversial. Here's another one. A stamp of Narodowe Zjednoczenie Wojskowe, National Military Unification, Okręg Tęcza, that means Mazovia. And here is the Ringgraf, or the bandana, shield. And it says the fifth raid of the cursed soldiers, or the Anti-communist Insurgents. Did you get the NKVD guide?
This thing is...
Were you able to? Okay. I'll show you reenactors, but this is reenacting. No, let's see reenactors. Can you put the sound on? That would be great. It's all the way. It's just, you have to turn on the computer. Minimize it. Escape. Go down to right here. Oh, this is on?
Yeah, it's on max.
Okay. So we'll play the music. Okay, kids, this is not professionally made. The kids who made the clips you'll see now, the clips and the kids in the picture are all reenactors and amateurs. I'm sorry that we don't have...
Speaker is on. Speaker is on. Is it what?
Anyway, when the kids first started this tradition, this particular... Tell me when you're ready, then I'll stop talking. But don't quarrel among yourselves. Okay. When they first started this tradition, recreating engagements, some of the local people, especially middle-aged, those who had been indoctrinated by the communists, mocked us. And now, thousands come to watch it. This particular one concerns an operation by Zizio Łupaszko, Zygmunt Błażejewicz I showed you a picture of before, and high school, my grandfather's best friend from high school, Lech Bejnar, Paweł Jasienica. Namely, the NKVD and the local Polish Communist Secret Police captured a couple of wounded insurgents. They killed one, they tortured another, but a kid from the village ran to alarm the guerrillas that the Communist Secret Police was around. So Major Łupaszko ordered something called a forced march, Marsz Gwiaździsty. All guerrilla units from the area converged on that little town, captured it, and gave the Reds a treatment they amply deserved. I'll show you pictures from the reenactment too. But this is...
I think it's ready. The sound seems kind of muffled.
Okay.
We can see the,
Okay.
see the image. Well, we can just play. At least we can see.
By the way, the kids took over the Union of Soldiers of the National Armed Forces. And they think they are that. They continue that tradition. Let's just see images. I think it's frozen. When the world has forgotten the nightmare of the war and the West was getting excited about Elvis Presley, we fought. These are all volunteers, kids. They dress up like this and reenact. There's a whole subculture, huge subculture of reenactment. They make their own uniforms, they sew them, sometimes they order them, custom order them. Really, we've been working on things like this for the past 25 years, since the implosion of communism. And of course you have combat medics. And the Germans are exactly like the German gendarmerie. This is actually the prayer written in 1942. Please note they all have the ring of the shield. Okay, those are the Soviets. First the Nazis, business, full pleasure. At any rate, let's go next. There have been movies made. A movie about Rotmistrz Pilecki, who fought the Bolsheviks as a Boy Scout and later a young Lancer in 1920. Then he fought the Nazis in 1939. A fantastic guy. He volunteered to be captured by the Nazis so he could go on a reconnaissance mission to Auschwitz, where he spent 3 years. He escaped from Auschwitz, survived, and he fought the Nazis in the Warsaw Uprising, made it to the West, turned around, returned to Poland, and the communists captured him and killed him as an American and Vatican spy. He was judicially murdered. Some of the lovely people we saw before. A movie about him hasn't been made, and I'm sure had it been made, it wouldn't be getting an Oscar. There are songs about those people in various genres. Some of them are very annoying because I don't like heavy metal. But here you go. Go ahead. Bartek. This is Rotmistrz Pilecki, the one who won't be from Zapola. Zagończy.
It'll go away.
Okay. Well, unless you enjoy heavy metal, I can send you a link. But here's another one. Another genre. This is reggae. I'm serious. And the band is called Paliny Wyklęte, or Cursed Ladies. Again, the Łupaszko Brigade, very popular. No, yes. And this is what they're singing about. A wanted poster by the communists. Okay, so let's see next one. I'm not kidding, this is all spontaneous. Nobody's paying those people. Oh, this is one of my kids. Leszek Tchaikovsky. This is almost 25 years old. He was one of the, I think he was the first. A very angry song. We accept donations for better equipment anytime. All times to God. We don't take any money from the taxpayer, by the way. This is all based on volunteers. This is the step unit. Okay. Anyway, angry guy. And here's the fourth one. This is from Secret Police Archives. Right here. Okay. I just want you to see. I think I have something in rap too, but this is actually, before you play, this is the best deception operation ever. Namely, the communists back in the 60s, for their own reasons, began courting they began courting a milieu that was opposed to communism, especially former guerrillas. Secret Police General Mocha put together a coalition, or wanted to put together a coalition toward national Bolshevism. And he said, well, you know, you can now talk about fighting the Nazis. We allow you to talk about fighting the Nazis. And there was an official song festival, military song festival. And one of the kids back then wrote a song about a lone birch cross in the countryside and the gorilla that was buried underneath. And the communists accepted it, except they didn't know the kid was a son of a gorilla in the units of my great uncle and Father Jan, most precisely of Wołynia, Zadzierski, in Zasani. And this is one of the most popular Polish songs back in the 60s and 70s. Very wistful, and nobody knew the background. The kids who were singing it were all related to Narodowa Organizacja Wojskowa, National Military Organization of the Home Army. So let's hear it. I bet all the Polish people from Poland know that. This is a cover.
You should mention that this ensemble is kind of like Polish Beatles, right?
Yeah.
Red guitars.
Yeah, red guitar.
Meditation.
Okay. And just to, aside from this singer and his band, there is a very famous Polish sculptor. If you go to Boston, until recently, for about 30 years or so, there was a sculpture called the Gorillas. If you go to Doylestown, Polish Częstochowa, there are also gorillas. Oh, there are also sculptures by him. And the most dramatic is the Katyn monument right opposite of World Trade Center. Can't miss it. Just Google Katyn World Trade Center. It's on the New Jersey side. So this guy is also a friend of the singer, and he's also a son of Ojciec Jan, Wołynia gorilla. It continues generation after generation, and until the evil ones exterminate us, we shall never stop. That's how it is. And it even boils down to soccer hooligans. Oh, how kind of you, Mr. Sternak, to call them soccer fans. Check out the handmade signs. The kids discovered the anti-Nazi, anti-communist insurgents. And they celebrate them and commemorate them at almost every single game. And the large banner reads, "The world was celebrating when the Poles were dying." And they usually chant, May 8, 1945, they usually chant Cześć I chwała bohaterom, glory and honor to heroes. And they're singing that the communists should be hit with a hammer and a sickle on their heads. Okay. Do we have anything else? Oh, there you go. Here is because one of the judicial murderers was a brother of Poland's most eminent liberal journalist, and his father had been in communist propaganda. Soccer hooligans don't want us to forget who those people were. So, there you go. Shefter, apologize for your father and brother. That's what it says. They remember the murders. Whether it's fair, churlish, that's another story. They remember, and I'll never forget. Many young people have realized their memories have been robbed by the communists, and this is a reaction, very virulent reaction of restoring memories.
When does that actually happen? What date?
When?
Yeah.
All the time.
Still now.
This is not one-time event. They keep inventing new things, and they always try to amaze and amuse everybody. Okay? And there are thousands of links on the internet because they love to. Oh, here is the Polish soccer hooligans have some kind of a deal with Swedish soccer hooligans, and various teams love each other, and other teams fight against one another. So the Swedes found out that Stefan Michnik, one of the judicial murderers, now lives in Sweden under an assumed name. So the Swedish fans went and picketed his house and chanted in Swedish, "Here's a murderer! Let's see it." I'm not kidding. This is December 16th, 2012. Poland asked for extradition, but the Swedes said no.
And the
Same in England with Wolinska. There are scenes from the cutting execution. More or less, they are telling the story of this particular murder and reveal that he lives here, he's lived in Sweden since 1969, and he should be deported to Poland to face the music. Soccer fans in solidarity with Polish soccer fans, demand the guy's extradition. We shall never forget, we shall never forgive. And they're chanting, Stefan Michnik is a murderer. Okay. Anything else?
This is a picture.
Oh, you see, partyzancką armię wyklęta, Śląsk Wrocław o was pamięta. Here's another one. You were asking me another team. Śląsk Wrocław. The previous one was Legion in Warsaw. This is in Wrocław, Breslau. It says, guerrilla army of the cursed ones. Śląsk Wrocław soccer team remembers you. They have all the faces, including Radziwoni. This is a Belarus one, Polish officer, who's Orthodox Christian and Belarus. That's him in the middle. And you have some of the faces, including Warszyc, Zagończyk, some of the faces that I showed you. There's just too much. We have albums and albums. It took a long, long time for Pavel to put it all together for you. I mean, I suggested certain things, but it's not overwhelming. But finally, we have a chunk of history back. A chunk even the Polish post office had to acknowledge that. Here is Rotmistrz Pilecki. Here's a tidbit. We're still friends with his granddaughter. His granddaughter's name is McQuaid. Married an American. Here's Inca. And here is, of course, Zizio Łupaszko, Major Sędziewicz, I told you about. This is not going to go away. The young who do all of this spontaneously realize that they continue a certain tradition. This isn't going away, and there's no justice, there's no peace. They'll remember, and they'll come back. Whenever anything crumbles in that area, all grievances will come up. And this time, unlike in 1989, when things should have been taken care of, including punishing the communists, there will be retribution, or there will be attempted retribution, and it concerns everyone. Because you cannot kill memories unless you exterminate everybody. And when a people want identity, they'll find it, and they will not find it in liberal, multiculturalist platitudes. They'll find it in their history and tradition. And the Nazis thought they would exterminate all Jews and the problem would go away. Well, there are survivors, they wrote things down, and now we know. And that's how it works with everybody. So unless the evil ones are ready to exterminate everyone, expect more board games. They're electronic games about communist insurgents. Hikes, masses. It's permanently embedded in the culture now. They have retrieved them more than 50 years later, since World War II. Half a century. And, you know, kids and others look for graves, secret graves. This is exactly how it was in Poland in the 1920s. People, kids mostly, were looking, but this was bless you, Gesundheit, whichever one applies. People were looking for graves of the insurgents of 1863, back in the 1920s. Because business is not finished until everyone is buried, and we honor everyone who fought for freedom. This is the same story now, except back then the government supported it. Now the government doesn't support it because it's liberal. And it's tied to the post-communists. That's a very simple story. All right, thank you for your attention. You've got more than you bargained for. You've been a wonderful captive audience. Thank you.